Today at the National Press Club, Jose Ramos-Horta, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, gained worldwide recognition campaigning for Timor-Leste's independence and is currently serving as the country's president. Here's Jose Ramos-Horta with today's National Press Club address.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the National Press Club in Canberra and the Westpac Address. My name is Laura Tingle and I'm the club's president. If you would bear with me for a small person indulgence in welcoming today's distinguished guest. A few years ago, a bureaucrat from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet rang me asking for contact details for my dad, John, who for many years was a journalist and broadcaster. The guy from PM&C said Jose Ramos-Horta was visiting Australia and had particularly asked if they could arrange a meeting with Mr Tingle, who he remembered fondly from dealings in the past when Dad had been good to him. Let's be honest, I thought it was a crank call. I rang Dad and said, oh yes, I interviewed him when he was still involved with Fredlin. He's got into a bit of a tight spot and I smuggled him out of a building in the boot of my car. I mention the story because, well, it's a good story, and I'm just a little bit impressed with what you learn about your parents getting up to when you're not looking. Go, Dad. But also because it goes to an underlying theme of Australia's relationships with Timor-Leste. That is, unfortunately, about skullduggery quite often. People sometimes doing the right thing by a near neighbour, but unfortunately, too often in Australia's case, of not doing the right thing. I acknowledge and welcome Bernard Collaery, who is in the room here today. But to address us now, please join me in welcoming back to the Press Club Nobel Laureate and President of Timor-Leste, His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos-Horta.
Thank you. First, I must begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathering today. I bow with respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. I extend the respect to Aboriginal Torres Strait Island people here today. Thank you, National Press Club, for having me again. This is the fourth time over many years. You have been always very generous in welcoming me to speak on Timor-Leste. I don't really have any speech or even prepared notes. Partly I'm an islander and always slow, lazy sometimes. And in the meantime, I have to prepare so many speeches. One for our national parliament on the 15th, to speak on the 100th day of my presidency and the challenges I had. Another speech to the UN General Assembly on the 23rd of September. I'm the fourth speaker in the General Assembly, which is a very good spot. The first speaker, the room is empty. And the second beginning to fill up. So I insisted I had to be fourth in the middle of it. And never agreed to be the first speaker in the afternoon. The room is empty. And so I thank you for your presence here, and for ABC for sharing it with the rest of the people across Australia and across the region. We have come a long way, 20 years since restoration of independence, starting from absolute ground zero. Anyone who had been in Timor-Leste 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, saw the devastation, physical devastation, but also what you would not have seen is the trauma of conflict, the fears, the desperation, people uprooted, the psychological effect, the anger, the frustration, and we had to deal with all of that. How first to heal the wounds of the people, the wounds of the soul, of the heart, that are unseen, but you can see in the eyes of the people. And how to rebuild or build a state from ashes when literally it didn't exist before. And of course, we had the assistance of the international community, of the United Nations, Interfaith before. The UN mission was established by a UN Security Council resolution, then Interfaith transition to UN peacekeeping, and successive UN mission, but always with very short mandates by the Security Council. Speaking once at the UN Security Council in New York about 20 years ago, I asked the Security Council members, again, on that occasion I spoke without notes. I asked the member Security Council if any of them ever ran a little Chinese takeaway food business in Manhattan. Of course, obviously none of them had experience with little Chinese takeaway. I made up some facts, and I said, do you know how long does it take a little Chinese takeaway food business to turn profit? I said, at least 2 years. Actually, a friend of mine who a young New York businesswoman told me later, Jose, it takes longer than 2 years, 5, 6, 7 years before you pay off everything. But I told them. And so you imagine a small takeaway, it takes 2 years to settle and turn profit, and you want to build a nation state, a democratic state in 2 years. 2 years was the UN mandate, Security Council mandate for the UN mission in Timor-Leste. And obviously the UN, the first mission ended with the restoration of independence midnight, May 20, 2002. And it was handed over to us. Each and any one of us had zero experience. Of course, we never had. We were never president, we were never prime minister, we were never minister. And so all of us was new to the responsibilities and inheriting a very complex situation where you have to heal the wounds of the people and normalize relations with our neighbors. I remember going to a US embassy function, and there were candlelight vigil in front of the US embassy in protest over US past relationship with occupation. And I was asked to comment on the vigil. And I said, if we were to observe a vigil at every country that did not support us, well, we would run out of days in the year. We'd have to do it every day, run out of candles in the shops. And that is only to illustrate our determination, led by our founding father, leader, Xanana Guzmão, without whose tenacity and brilliance, we would not have arrived at the referendum in '99 and the restoration of independence 2002. But Xanana, having spent 17 years leading the resistance that had been crushed completely, physically, and the human toll of what happened, and then with his extraordinary willpower, he decided to reorganize the resistance. Of course, the people wanted it. So it was thanks, and then he was in prison. 8 years in prison, high security prison, and preach reconciliation among the East Timorese and the Timor-Leste and the Indonesia. So today, Timor-Leste is, I can say, with pride. And I have traveled over more than 100 countries in the world. In the Balkans, in particular Bosnia, soon after the conflict there. I've been to Guatemala, Central America, Colombia. One of the very first mediation mission I did was in June '98, and it was in Colombia. If you search Google and go to Washington Post and CNN, you will find a story of my mediation in the jungles of Colombia in June '98 to release 15 girls who had been kidnapped by one of the rebel groups. To make the story short, because it took weeks of mission, and I secured their release, and for the first time, without paying any ransom to the captors. Compared with many other situations in the African continent, like Sudan, or tragically Myanmar today. Well, Timor-Leste, I have to say, tribute to Shanana and other leaders, because everyone agree with the policies of reconciliation and normalization of relations with Indonesia, Australia, and everybody else, which enable us creating the climate to develop the country. Develop the country, again, with extraordinary generosity from the international community. Countries like Australia, New Zealand, far away, Portugal, Spain, UK, Republic of Ireland, Germany, France, Japan, Korea, China, Brazil in South America, and many others that I apologize if any of them I miss. So we are very much also a product of our own people tenacity, but a product also of international solidarity. Timor-Leste today, I would say, is very much an oasis of tranquility. We have at time to time sporadic incidents among youth groups, but they are very sporadic. We have zero political crime, zero political violence, zero ethnic-based or religious-based violence, zero discrimination from the 98% Catholic majority towards the smaller Muslim and Protestant communities. And I would say almost zero organized crime. Well, organized crime, I would say probably, generally we are a bit disorganized as a country. So our criminals also are disorganized. So the concept of organized crime requires a lot of sophistication. And so we are doing pretty well. But the challenge of the next 5-10 years are enormous. Who would think that after Bosnia, after World War II, after the Balkans, the genocide in Bosnia, and that Europe would confront one of the most dangerous times, and with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, with no end in sight, and who knows what's going to happen in Ukraine. And who would thought that the regime in Myanmar would launch a coup following the landslide election by NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi, being a member of ASEAN, in the heart of ASEAN. So nothing can be discarded as risks and dangers. South China Sea, Taiwan, all of this, as we see the militarization of South China Sea. We see that incredible tensions over Taiwan, and of course not to discard North Korea. But Timor-Leste remains an oasis of tranquility, and the good news, after more than 10 years of strenuous effort on our part, on the part of our government, starting with the first, the government led by Mr. Shenana Guzmão in 2007. By 2011, we applied to join ASEAN. Well, the news are that we probably will be joining next year in 2023, completing the Southeast Asian family of nations. And that presents extraordinary opportunities for Timor-Leste as an economy. From 1.5 million people, we will be part of 700 million economy with a high upper income of more than 200 million people. And how Timor can benefit from that, from being part of ASEAN. I personally always believe in free trade agreements. I knew Mexico, not living there, but visiting, before NAFTA. I was there when NAFTA was beginning, and there was a lot of writings from Marxist economists criticizing NAFTA. Well, Mexico changed dramatically with NAFTA. So much so that Donald Trump felt that the US had been cheated with NAFTA and demanded and succeeded in the renegotiation of NAFTA. So I'm not afraid of free trade agreements. It will benefit Timor-Leste, but to benefit, we need much more support from Australia in terms of helping assist Timor-Leste, thinking about the new economic opportunities and challenges, how we can review our national strategic plan. And a strategic plan is not Bible. It can be reviewed and has to be reviewed in view of the new economic opportunities, realities in Southeast Asia, the challenges. What was priority 10 years ago might not be a priority today, or that priority might be even more today. So we hope that Australia will provide us with some expertise to help us to exploit these opportunities. Well, obviously, many of you here probably want to know more about some concrete challenges like the greater sunrise than my general comments. One of the great challenges of development for Timor-Leste is precisely how to develop greater sunrise. We started off at independence with Bayu Undan, the Timor Sea Treaty, which took the pipeline to Darwin, benefited enormously Northern Territory, Darwin, benefited enormously obviously ConocoPhillips, Woodside, and all the joint venture, and also benefiting Timor-Leste. It was our pragmatic approach at the time that agreeing on the deal at the time brought us what today is our sovereign fund with $18 billion. We have a more cash reserves than Pakistan or Bangladesh. Thanks to that sovereign fund, we have invested in infrastructure that didn't exist before. Like you go today to Timor-Leste, traveling from Dili to Baucau, you can do in 2 hours. I have done once in 1 hour, 45 minutes, but I'm not going to do it again. I said, why the hell you have to go so fast? And yeah, electricity covering 96.1% of the territory. Soon we will have among the fastest internet in the entire region, with submarine cables coming from Australia, from Alor, from Atambua, Obviously, from Atambua, it's not submarine cable, it's fiber optic. And the new port of Dili will be inaugurated end of November. The process moving from current port to the new port, which is a $400 million project, entirely funded through a public-private partnership. It is Timor-Leste money, over $100 million, IFC, and Bolloré, the giant French company. Of course, then it was subcontracted to China Harbor, but China Harbor or China has zero financial commitment there. It's entirely a PPP, Timor-Leste government, IFC, and the Bolloré of France. $300 million investment to renovate, expand our current airport in Dili. The US, through the Pentagon, is rebuilding our actually longest runway in Baucau, which has been abandoned for many decades. And now they are working full swing to renovate that international airport. So many initiatives that are ongoing. And the US is committing almost $500 million through the Millennium Challenge Corporation to improve waters and draining and the technical vocational school for teachers training for high school level and so on. So these are, and we need to develop the Greater Sunrise for the next generations to come. Every study we have conducted, and I personally, in the past, I didn't believe much in the feasibility of and the viability of that because of the deep trench, because of the cost. But I did my own research when I was out of office for 10 years. I had zero involvement with the government. I was mostly with the UN, even I was deployed all the way to West Africa. I led a UN high-level panel on peace operations to review all UN peace operations around the world from a conceptual, doctrinal and operational side of it, so unengaged with the Timor. But I did research with friends in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, elsewhere, and they all said, oh, why it's not feasible? And I have seen studies commissioned by our government. From Greater Sunrise to Darwin is 500 kilometers. From Greater Sunrise to Timor-Leste is less than 200 kilometers. And it's a bit like, you want to buy some bread, and instead of buying next door to you, the next shop across the street, you decide to go to buy in Darwin, 2,000 miles away. Or like, if instead of delivering your laundry to across the street, you say, well, I better deliver it in one laundry that is about 10 kilometers from here. Make no sense for simple people like me. And then, with due respect, costs like tax in Australia is horrendous. Labor cost is horrendous, which is great anyway, because we have Timorese workers in Australia, and we appreciate that you're paying them so well. And everything in Australia is much more expensive. In Timor-Leste, I buy a whole bag of mangoes for maybe $5, particularly if I buy in the mountains. In Australia, $9 a mango. Maybe it's Gucci mango. So, so I don't understand the economics of the joint venture for insisting to take the pipeline. But we are open to discussions with the government. There is a fantastic prime minister in this country whom I know well for many, many years. We shared many times in the past with the foreign minister. We are happy with some of the new line of speech by the head of Woodside. I don't even remember the name of the CEO, but I saw in the media. So it looks like there is a positive climate for us to resolve the development of Greater Sunrise with a pipeline coming to Timor-Leste. Media kept asking me about China. Well, in the region there are more than China. If we start with Indonesia, we have the closest possible relationship with Indonesia, and President Widodo is absolutely committed to invest in Timor-Leste to raise our economy together with the province of NTT, Nusa Tenggara Timur. A joint industrial park is going to be built in the next near future. A free trade zone in Waikusi, 10 kilometers into Indonesia, 10 kilometers into East Timor, Waikusi, and other developments. So we have, and Indonesia has a huge gas field called Abadi, which is very near Greater Sunrise. So Indonesia is a potential investor in Greater Sunrise. Why not? South Korea is one of the great potential investors, and I have a close as possible relationship with Korea, going back to President Kim Dae-jun, whom I'm the one who nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2001. And and I'm going there again in December to chair a summit of Nobel laureates meeting in Korea on the 12th of December. And then we have Japan possibility, and of course China. But you know, it's a pipeline. We're not talking about maritime security, or it's just a pipeline, and China will be just an investor. And so Darwin, you know, rented the port of Darwin for 100 years to China, and no one lost sleep in Darwin over it. You know, and but people lose sleep. Just some fishing vessels, all Chinese fishing vessels, coming to Solomons or going to Timor-Leste. Oh, not at all. Of course, we know the tensions, you know, of the global powers. We understand all of that, but Timor-Leste. I end my comments. I'm afraid. And how much time do we have? Well, continue. This. I ask Australian leaders, when you look at Timor-Leste, you know, open the map of the area, put on a big table. Forget about the median line. It is there. Australia accepted a permanent maritime boundary between us and Australia based on the median line, as against past position where Australia claimed that its maritime boundary extend beyond the median line all the way to almost the shores of Timor-Leste, based on the ancient law of the sea that accept the continental shelf. I remember a few years ago, I think Prime Minister Albanese was there when I spoke in Balmain. And I said, based on Australia's claim of continental shelf, I would say the following. A, there are no two continental shelves between Timor-Leste and Australia. There's only one continental shelf. And based on that, well, Timor-Leste could claim also the whole of Australia. The only country I wouldn't claim would be Tasmania, because they are such nice people. I would leave them alone. And since then, Australia slept in fear and agreed to the median line maritime boundary, thanks to Shannon Guzman's brilliance and audacity, and the sense of, how you call it, sense of state on the part of Australia, particularly Julie Bishop, who together with Shannon negotiate and agree on the median line, elevating Australian stand in the world, Australian argument that there is a rules-based, international law, rules-based to resolve disputes of this nature. The Chinese followed this whole debate. The Japanese and everybody who had maritime disputes were studying the Timor Sea and how Australia and the Timor-Leste under UN auspices resolve it. So congratulations to both the Australian government at the time, Julie Bishop and Shanana Guzman, for giving this great lesson in international dispute settlement. So I would tell Australia, we have the median line there. The median line is literally invisible. You can travel on a canoe there. You look, you cannot see it because it's just water. But look at Timor-Leste as part of Australia's grand national strategic interest. And Timor-Leste look at Australia as part of our grand national strategic interest. Look at Timor-Leste as part of your grand economic interest. And we look at Australia as part of our grand economic interest. That being the case, Australia, 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times richer than Timor-Leste, a much older country, should do everything to sustain that country, for which many Australians gave their lives during World War II and contributed with Interfaith, with ISF, International Security Force. Well, I end with this little story. I have my own personal connections with Australia, many different connections. One, many years ago, our poor mother, who survived many wars, she survived World War II, Japanese occupation, survived 75 and all conflicts in Timor-Leste. Then one day I took her to Dare, to a new cafe there, where there is a memorial for Australian servicemen who died in Timor during World War II, also in tribute to Timorese and Portuguese who died there. And there is an exhibit, photo exhibit, of Australian military Timorese during World War II. Our mother, a survivor of World War II, she looked at one of the pictures, she said, excitedly, emotionally, "That's Captain Ledlow." She recognized the Australian Army captain in the village of Remeshiu, where that unit was a station, was based. But at one point, so our mother, her whole family were there. At one point, Captain Ledlow told everybody, we must leave this area. The Japanese are going to attack in full force. We cannot hold this place. The old woman, who was later to become our grandmother, refused to leave, but sent away her two teenage daughters, our mother, who became our mother, and a sister. And they followed the Australians all the way to Betanu, and they all evacuated to Australia. Over the years, I heard our mother talk about Narrabri, where she and everybody stayed as refugees. And so the Australian relationship with Timor-Leste goes back at least to that time, and in the hearts and minds of many Australians who have visited us over these many, many years, and so many Timorese who were sheltered here generously by Australians in 75 during the Civil War and then after. Well, we are very much part of Australian history, and Australia is very much part of our history. And it doesn't take much. It would be on. I know that the government, federal government, is not directly involved. This is joint ventures responsibility, and with our government. But I hope the Australian government can assist in bringing the pipeline to Timor-Leste, this being the best economic option for Australia, for the joint venture, and for Timor-Leste and for the region. Australia would this way contribute to a very dynamic Timor-Leste economy in the next few years. You would see Timor-Leste like either another Dubai or another Singapore. Far-fetched when people say, look like Dubai. Yeah, absolutely. Timor-Leste has more land, arable land, more resources than Singapore or Dubai. Dubai is not Dubai without Abu Dhabi. But Dubai born out of the desert through the imagination of the leaders and the creativity, the audacity, what to do. And Singapore is the same. Out of nothing, Singapore is what is today. If at the time you had been listening to Lee Kuan Yew, you probably say, well, he is dreaming. Well, Timor-Leste is in better condition than any of them in the beginning. We have a neighbor, Australia, that can, yes, make this miracle happening. The next several years, yes, the challenge are these. Our generation of 75 walking toward the sunset and new leadership emerging. And there are many bright new leaders. Some are here, sitting here in this. I don't mention everybody's names, but this table, number 3, is several of them. 3 women here, brilliant women, an army police officer, a navy officer, and my senior advisor, international relations, and Janelle Safin. She's 99% Timorese, and Susie from the Australian embassy in Timor-Leste. Her husband is from Samoa. And so I hope that Prime Minister Albanese, remembering the great heart and the great lessons of humanity, of leadership from that great man, physically speaking, Tom Uren, and a great man in his soul, in his heart. Not everything in life are numbers. Numbers are important when you do planning in economics, in development, but numbers have to be matched with heart, with vision, with heart, with compassion. And here it's not only a measure of heart, compassion, no, it's pragmatism. What is really important for Australia? And Australia has shown already wisdom in stepping back from the old position, in refusing to accept Timorese legitimate claims on a permanent maritime boundary. That was a first major step that showed the best of Australia. So, and this one is pragmatic as well. So let's all support the pipeline going to Timor-Leste for the benefit of the shareholders of the joint venture, at Woodside and others, and for the benefit of our people. So I stop here. I thank you all once again for being so generous, so kind, and giving me the 4th time the opportunity to share with friends from across Australia. God bless you all.
Well, thank you for your speech today. If I could, I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about the joint venture and a whole range of other issues about the relationship. But if I could just take you to your comments reflecting on China's not the only power around, Indonesia's involved, and keen to invest in Timor-Leste as one example. But I wondered whether you could give us your view of China in the region, not necessarily in terms of its investment directly in Timor-Leste, but how do you see China and the way it's proceeding into the region, particularly given you're about to join ASEAN?
I do not claim to be an expert on China. There are many who are much more enlightened and experienced than I. But the very first time I went to China was January or February 76. I stayed in what then was the best hotel in Beijing, called the Beijing Hotel. Looking down, I saw tens of thousands of people on foot, on bicycles, wearing either black or gray suit. And you would see few cars occasionally, and mostly black sedans of the party officials. I've been back since many, many times over the years. Changed dramatically from the Cultural Revolution, Civil War, etc., to a much more pragmatic new China led by Deng Xiaoping. To today is incredible superpower. And different from the old Soviet Union. Soviet Union was superpower only because of nuclear weapons. China is a nuclear power sustained by a very strong modern economy and financial reach around the world. That is the new China. But the new China, for the dramatic progress it's made, it depended on very stable, peaceful world. Benefited a lot from trade with the US, with Europe, with Japan, with Korea, with Southeast Asia. And the ASEAN countries were the only economic bloc that had surplus with China. Everybody else deficit. So ASEAN countries benefited a lot. Would they want ever to undermine that with unwise actions? No, I do not think so. And they will have to handle extremely carefully the issue of Taiwan. They have to handle very carefully the issue of South China Sea. It's unsustainable in international law. The claims of a 1,000-mile exclusive economic zone. China has this unfortunate geography, unlike the US, which to the north you have Canada, to the south you have Mexico, to east, west you have the vast oceans unimpeded. And China has too many neighbors, too many choke points, and to feed itself, it depends on stability in the seas, freedom of navigation, depends on stability in the world. And China, thousands of years of wisdom, and observing what happened in Ukraine, probably would weigh on the Chinese to continue the policy of the past of prudence in dealing with, in international relations with their differences. That's how I don't think China intends to invade anyone. And in fact, in fairness to them, God, they hardly ever invaded anyone. It was every European country that invaded them. The British twice, 2 opium wars, and the French, and everybody invaded them. Even the Portuguese didn't invade them. The Portuguese helped them, actually. The Portuguese helped the Chinese fighting the pirates in South China Sea. And in recognition, the Chinese gave Portugal Macau. Macau was a gift from China in recognition for Portuguese support to China fighting off pirates in the South China Sea.
Anna Henderson.
Anna Henderson from the Special Broadcasting Service and National Indigenous Television. You've spoken about the economic benefits you see potentially flowing from the development of the Greater Sunrise gas field, but how do you weigh that up against the climate consequences, and why is it defensible to the people of your country and to the broader region for this project to go ahead?
First, Greater Sunrise is gas, so clean energy, though non-renewable. But at the same time, I have to be very frank. The Americans, US, the Europeans, and of course, then Japan, and of course China, but India. But first the Europeans. You were the ones who polluted the whole world with coal, with oil, everything else you can imagine. And we unfortunately discover oil and gas only now. And the Europeans are lecturing us. We have to move to away from fossil fuel. I have no authority to make any proposal, but I can make one off the top of my head. The Europeans, Australia, US, give us $100 billion, and we give up on Greater Sunrise development. As simple as that, because the revenues from Greater Sunrise estimated at about $50 billion. Plus, if we develop it, will generate at least additional $50 billion or more. So give us $100 billion and forget about the dispute over a pipeline, and we don't develop Greater Sunrise. Other than that, please don't lecture me.
That seems like a reasonable enough proposition. Andrew Tillett.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Andrew Tillett from the Press Club here with the Australian Financial Review. Thank you for your speech. I just want to go back to the point you were making about the Australian government and the role it can play in ensuring Greater Sunrise is developed. What exactly do you want the Australian government to do in this sort of current, I guess, sort of standoff at the moment? Do you want them to put a bit of pressure on Woodside? Do you want them to bulldoze it, go ahead with it anyway? What exactly are you seeking from the government?
Okay, I understand that an oil company like Woodside or any oil company or any other major business in democracies, no pressure. They do what they think is the best, their best economic financial interest. I understand that completely. And I don't think it would be proper for me to suggest Australian government to put pressure on Woodside. But I suspect that if Woodside, I suspect Woodside would prefer to lose at least 30% of other revenues. Let's say if it were to go to Timor-Leste, it would get $50 billion in revenues for its shareholders over their lifetime. If it goes to Darwin, it would probably generate only $30 billion. It still would prefer to go to Darwin because it's home, you know. So that's how it would react. Partly maybe uncertainty, you know, so-called sovereign risk, etc. It's totally understandable. But as I said, Timor-Leste, we are even more peaceful than the Gulf countries. You know, whether you talk about Qatar or Saudi Arabia or the Emirates. Who thought, you know, years ago that out of the Yemen conflict, missiles would be fired into Saudi oil fields, as it happened a year or so ago? Who would thought that the Emirates would go into war in Yemen, and in response, and the rebels in Yemen fired missiles into Abu Dhabi? And who thought it would be possible that some of the Gulf Cooperation Council members would impose sanctions on Qatar? So Timor-Leste, we are totally innocent. We have a great relationship with everybody, with Australia, with Indonesia, countries in the region, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, North Korea. What I mean, Northeast Asia. I'm actually blacklisted in North Korea. Zero sovereign risk. And, you know, Yeah, we are not Venezuela that nationalize companies and whatever. We don't have that. We haven't done in 20 years nothing, and we are so inefficient that we probably wouldn't know how to nationalize a company, and so no need to fear. We are.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
António Sampaio.
Boa tarde, Sr. Presidente. António Sampaio, da Lusa. Sir, irrespective of what decision gets made and which investors come into the Greater Sunrise Project, Timor-Leste is going to have to spend some money, particularly with onshore option if the pipeline comes to Timor. The Petroleum Fund, with current estimates of spending, will be run out within a decade. How do you expect Timor to be able to continue to finance itself during the time the project is being developed, with this fiscal cliff fast approaching? And do you think that Australia, in light of the fact that the median line would have placed all of the resources of Bayu-Undan on the Timor side, have any sort of debt pending towards Timor financially?
Yes, the current at the current speed of the expenditure, we have withdrawing from our sovereign fund. We don't have much choice but relying on the sovereign fund. But with prudence, the next coming years, and with greater international support, we can extend the life of the sovereign fund. This, according to the World Bank estimates, it can. Given time for Greater Sunrise to develop, but also given time for other the diversification of our economy. What Foreign Minister Penny Wong said today, which I appreciate, and the Prime Minister, is how Australia will support Timor-Leste to have added value to its agricultural products and other things, to help in diversification of our economy, so not to rely solely on non-renewable energy. But in the worst case scenario, I am confident it will, the development of Great Sunrise will happen. I'm confident pipeline will come to Timor-Leste. With Timor-Leste own investment, which will be small anyway, but with even Indonesian partners. And there are Indonesia today is the fastest growing economy, fourth best performing economy in the world, in spite of a global recession and all of that. And President Widodo and everybody else in Indonesia, they are very determined to incrementally increase the economic partnership with Timor-Leste. And that can include the development of Greater Sunrise, together with Abadi in the same area. So I am confident this will happen, and but I'm also confident that in the end we will reach an agreement with Woodside and the other joint venture members. I'm optimistic about that.
And that financial debt, part of my question, the Australian financial debt, part of my question towards its Timor, for the resources that under the median line would have been Timorese, but that were...
Well, yeah. Australia, during the period of when Australia made false claims about Timor Sea and granted exploitation rights to companies, well, much more was extracted from the Timor Sea that is rightfully ours than we know, and that is. But at the same time, I speak for myself, and I don't carry. It doesn't imply everybody think the same way, but Australia also has contributed enormously, diplomatically, politically, financially, economically, since '99 to Timor-Leste well-being, and there is no doubt about that. If we add the figures and the cost of Australia's engagement with Timor-Leste has been enormous. So Shanana, the leader of the negotiations on the maritime boundary, and others agree to put these matters aside.
Thank you.
Matthew Knott.
Antonio Sampaio, he was a cadet of the Australian when he was very young, and now one of the most respected Portuguese journalists in Portugal, and the most loved in Timor-Leste.
I feel intimidated now. Matthew Knott from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. I was wondering if I could ask you a broader question about the Pacific. Yesterday afternoon, the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, Manasseh Sogavare, issued a pretty remarkable statement accusing Australia of trying to interfere in its democracy by offering to fund next year's elections and by speaking about that publicly. I was wondering if you think that there's anything inappropriate or unusual about that, and if you could reflect a bit more broadly on Mr. Sogavare's leadership. He's quite a big figure in Canberra at the moment in terms of a security deal with China, the decision about naval ships, and now the elections. I was wondering if you could reflect on him as a leader. Do you have any concerns about him?
Sorry, who's financing elections in Australia?
Australia has offered to fund the Solomon Islands elections, which it says it does for many countries in the Pacific.
Australia offer funds for the elections in
to help pay for the election.
Well, many countries have done that to support local institutions. We, in the past, we got a lot of support from the UN. And of course, the UN money comes from where? Comes from Australia, US. That goes to UNDP, to the UN electoral experts to set up the system, the voter registration, all of that. If it's Australia supporting Solomon Islands or Papua New Guinea, yeah, that's very legitimate. And I would welcome Australia, even though we are a bit more financially secure. I would appreciate Australia to buy us some more modern technology for our election in Timor-Leste. Nothing wrong with that.
What about Mr. Sogavare as a leader, more broadly?
Pardon?
Mr. Sogavare as a leader, the Solomon Islands leader.
The illegal in the Solomon Islands?
Just asking what's your assessment of him as a leader?
What would I advise Solomon Islands?
Yes, about his leadership of the Solomon Islands.
God, I'm not very familiar with the Solomon Island. I would look, Timor-Leste is absolutely sensitive on a very sensitive strategic location. We are 30 minutes, 45 minutes jet fighter flight from Darwin. Next door is Indonesia. Not too far away is Singapore. Any leader that is serious about being a leader, you have to be sensitive to your neighbors. Don't bring in extra territorial, regional interest powers that might not be welcomed by our neighbors. I give you one example. In 2006, we have a security crisis in Timor-Leste. I was the foreign minister at that time. We collectively, Timor, decided to invite Australia, New Zealand, Portugal, and Malaysia to deploy peace enforcers to Timor-Leste before the UN resolution. I called President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono of Indonesia to explain to him the situation in Timor-Leste, that we need to invite foreign forces to come to Timor-Leste. I informed him in advance. He appreciated, and he even called the Malaysians to say, go ahead, help the Timorese. So you have, we would never do anything, any rational Timorese leader would never do anything that without taking into consideration the sensitivities of your neighbors. So that would be my message to my brothers and sisters in Pacific Islands.
Stephen Judges.
Hello, sir. Thank you for your time. Stephen Jedgetts from ABC News. The Australian Financial Review reported not long ago that ERCE had completed new modelling on the proposal to pipe gas north to Timor-Leste and to build a processing plant. And this report apparently says that the project would be viable. But analysts and some NGOs are deeply sceptical about some of the assumptions underpinning this report, and they've called on you and the government to make that report public in its entirety so that it can be assessed in full. Is that a commitment that you're willing to make today, to release the findings of that report so that everyone can assess its merits?
Well, the Timor-Leste government over the years has commissioned many studies, one by McKinsey and many others. I personally have talked with experts in Singapore and elsewhere about, for my personal information, because I was not involved and I was not speaking for anyone. And yeah, definitely, it would be, I say, entirely counterproductive, shooting ourselves in the foot, if in the possession of credible, independent studies, evaluations of the feasibility, both in technology and security and profitability and the sustainability of that project, we decide to hide it, because it doesn't meet our preconceived assumptions. And we prefer to go along with our own assumptions, disregarding the very technical studies that we commission. So I have no doubt, but our government has commissioned more than one and over the years. And all point to technical feasibility, no problem, nowadays. Second, commercially entirely viable, and the costs, the pipeline itself is not so what is more costly. More costly is the infrastructure on this onshore. And the onshore, it generates thousands of jobs, multiplying effect. And and then when the infrastructure are ready, all the industries that were created will go on for many decades to come, like fertilizer plant and all of that. There is a deficit of fertilizers in the world and impacting on agriculture. So everything points to Timor-Leste. And besides, we are already, if the buyers are Korea, Japan, and so on, well, we are already several hundred miles away from our Northern Territory, from Darwin. So why not you save at least 500, 600 miles shipping. And
So when you say, sorry, just to clarify, so there's no reason not to, that's a commitment that Timor-Leste is willing to make, that the government is willing to make?
Well, yeah, I have to say, I'm the president, and we have a system of government that the prime minister is the one that make these decisions, but I have no problem, If we had nuclear secrets, yes, I wouldn't divulge that. The same policy like United States, and and I'm not saying that whether we have nuclear capabilities or not. I cannot comment. I cannot comment on that. Anything else, everything else, and listen. I would agree to divulge, yeah.
ABC One is leaving us, but the news channel is continuing to cover. If you've got some time for a couple more questions.
Yes, sure, yes, pleasure.
So Ben Westcott.
Ben Westcott from Bloomberg. Thank you so much for your speech today. I really now want to ask you about your nuclear capabilities, but I'm going to leave that one. In May, right after you were elected again as president of East Timor, you said that you would welcome Chinese investment in a wide range of areas, infrastructure, digitalization, renewable energy, artificial intelligence, huge range of areas. My question is there any area in which you would be reluctant to receive investment from China? Is there anything that you would consider ring-fenced?
Well, for the one thing I can say, we have zero loans from China. We are one of the few countries in the world with the lowest ratio of loan per capita as per our GDP. We never contemplated loans from China. Not that we are suspicious of anything. Our favorite partners in terms of loans, which we have, is Asian Development Bank, IFC, that have financed already a number of projects. We don't even have loans from any other Western commercial banks. And we wouldn't, for instance, the European Export Bank, Investment Bank, very high interest rate. When I asked one senior European official, because they were interested in lending, they said 7%. I said, what? And so we stick with World Bank, IFC, and ADB. Trade with China, we have plenty, but we still have more investments in Timor-Leste from Singapore, Indonesia, and Australia. More trade with these three countries than with China. But the problem is, I tell you one, many years ago, I was traveling to Baucau. I saw someone who obviously looks Chinese on a bicycle carrying about 50 kilos of merchandise, selling along the way. And if you know Timor-Leste, God, mountain road. And I thought to myself, no, this guy cannot be a Timorese Chinese. A Timorese Chinese already in the habit of being Timorese would never do that. And it has to be a Chinese from mainland. And then another time I was in the south coast of Timor, where plenty of our family are there. In the evening, driving past, I saw this, again, someone looking Chinese in a shop, sitting on the veranda. It was already dark. Never before there were any Chinese there. Now they're all over Timor-Leste. They're selling all kinds of merchandise. I would love to see white Australians, Anglo-Saxon Australians, where Italians, Lebanese, coming to Timor-Leste, sitting next to a Chinese man, selling some shoes, selling some cheap clothing, some noodles, but Australians no longer do these things, or never did these things. Italians no longer do. And what the Chinese brought to Timor-Leste, well, extraordinary availability of goods. You can buy a pair of shoes for $2. And in Australia, $2 you cannot even buy a mango. And construction material, so much cheaper to buy construction material. Because the Chinese, by the thousands, they're competing each other. So prices went down in Timor-Leste. And I have had direct experience with this because over the years I bought construction material to help poor communities, poor families, and how cheaper today than it was 10, 20 years ago. So on trade, no restriction whatsoever with China. But yes, we have we are going to have a growing relationship with Indonesia in terms of trade and economic investment from Indonesia. And potentially with Brunei and Malaysia. A few weeks ago, a group of businessmen, investors from Brunei and Malaysia came with more than $1 billion plan to invest in make Baucau Airport an aircraft maintenance hub, 5-star hotel in Baucau, plus regional air cargo hub in Baucau, profiting from the rehabilitation of the airport that the US Pentagon is doing for us.
Nick Stewart.
Thank you. On behalf of those people who remember 25 years ago when you used to sit with us rather than stand up there, I'd like to welcome you here again. You mentioned two countries that Timor-Leste is similar to. One was Dubai, which of course has the enormous oil revenue. The other is Singapore, which has created that wealth from within itself. I was wondering, which path do you see Timor-Leste taking now? Do you see it as simply waiting for the oil revenues to come in? Or do you see instead a dynamic, vigorous East Timor that is struggling to become something different in its own area?
For me personally, and the view is shared by everyone in Timor-Leste, including our international development partners, absolute priorities for the next years to come is improve education facilities. For me, focus particularly on science, technology, on labor skills. This is what I've been asking Australia repeatedly over the years. Same time, and the US investment, Millennium Challenge Corporation, precisely focused on a top-class teachers' college for high school level. We have to eliminate child malnutrition. We have to support more pregnant mothers. We have to encourage up to 80%, if possible, breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is very low in Timor-Leste. It's about 60% or less. This contributes to malnutrition. And we can do all of this with existing resources the country has. According to UNICEF, I've been working very closely with them and then with us. In 5 years, we can eliminate stunt and child malnutrition with small investment, $10 million a year for the gestation to 2 years age, 3 years age. 3 years to 6 years, we open more preschools for the children because 60% Timorese children don't go to a preschool. In a preschool, yes, you can dramatically improve nutrition and, of course, early childhood learning. So these are the absolute priorities. Agriculture, food security. But we also need to develop our tourism industry, and we can. Timor-Leste can become a small financial center. Why not? In the whole of Asia of 4 billion people, and where you have the more accumulation of liquidity, there are only 3 financial centers: Dubai, Singapore, and Hong Kong, Shanghai. But Hong Kong is moribund because of Chinese
interference?
Action. So now you have Dubai and Singapore. So why not Timor-Leste as a financial center? And the proposal that came from Brunei and Malaysia, they contemplate a financial center in Timor-Leste.
So we've got one last question from our student questioner today from Radford College, Gianna Giardella. And just a reminder that the delegation has to be out of here by 2 p.m. So we can make it fast.
Hi, my name is Gianna from Radford College. Over the past 14 years, students and teachers have been travelling to and from Timor-Leste, and it is such a huge honour to be walking alongside our friends from Timor-Leste. My question for you today is, how can my generation learn from the past experiences between Timor-Leste and Australia to strengthen our future relationship so that our young people can have success no matter where they live or are born?
Thank you. I would like to see, and I've been saying this, advocating this for many, many years, I would like to see much, much greater number of friendship schools When I first appointed our consul in Sydney, Abel Guterres, wonderful human being, today our ambassador in Brunei, 8 years ambassador in Canberra, I told him, focus on friendship schools and friendship cities. I want to see Australian schools adopting a Timorese school. I want to see an Australian small town adopting a Timorese town. Yeah, there have been already some initiatives like that. So you come into Timor-Leste and developing relations there with our schools, with communities is great. I want to see thousands of Australian youth going to Timor-Leste through the year, as we are doing now with Australian veterans. Not the veterans of World War II, unforgiving age, most of them unable to, some majority passed away, but veterans from Interfed, from ISF, they've been coming to Timor-Leste 3-4 times a year. And one place they always go, except this last time, always go is my residence. I always host a barbecue for them every time the Australian veterans visit Timor-Leste. And this time I was not able to because there are multiple engagements, conflicting engagements, couldn't host them. So please come and visit and spend time with the school. Bring whatever you can, sports equipment, computers, but don't bring old computers because to them are more sophisticated than 20 years ago. I have to say, and pardon people who are generous, many years ago, I was so excited to receive something like 12 computers from an institution in Canberra, not government. The institution in Canberra. I was so excited to have so many computers. In Sydney, temporarily, the computers were there. Our mother, who was, she was born before World War II. She is almost illiterate. When she looked at those computers, she said, but they look so old. And no, we need new computers, new laptops, new technology, because our Timor-Leste has one of the highest use of social media. Facebook and TikTok, Instagram, and so on. So please come and bring, your knowledge, your technology. People enjoy meeting foreigners, particularly in the communities.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank the President for his comments today.
Thank you.